This story begins with a fortune telling. A couple of months ago, I found myself on a backpacking trip with a bunch of Earlham students in the Uinta Mountains of Utah. And yes, it is this beautiful sometimes. While we were there, we encountered a lot of rain. And during one of these rainstorms, we were all sitting in the tent together, and one of my partners on the trip decided that she was going to read all of our palms. And so we went around and she did that, and when she got to my palm, she looked at it and with some surprise in her voice said, "Wow, you have 2 lifelines. I've never seen that before." And we all kind of laughed, and I shrugged it off because I don't believe in palm reading. But that moment has stuck with me because the last couple of years, I've been on a journey that one might consider to be a second lifeline. I've been on a journey to redefine my gender. For some people, their gender matches their biological sex, and for others, it does not. And I am one of those for whom it does not. So I'd like you to ponder 2 questions with me. The first one is, when did you choose your gender? That one might be a little hard to answer, but the second one may be a little easier. When did you first express your gender? When I was young, I have a memory of my dad and brother cutting wood in the backyard, and it was a hot summer day, and they had taken their shirts off. I also wanted to take my shirt off so that I could be like them, but I was told that I wasn't allowed to do that because I was a girl. In middle school, I always had this persistent sense of being an outsider. It was small, but it was there. I never really understood why. But I was kind of a weird kid. I read everything I could get my hands on, and I drew pictures of horses in the margins of my notebooks. And I watched all the other girls in my class to try and figure out their secrets. They introduced me to the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, and they told me which boys in my class that I should have a crush on, because the guy that I really liked was gay. In high school, I had a lot of good guy friends, but I was never really one of their inner circle. I longed to be invited to their video game nights and guys-only gatherings, but it never really happened. So, the question that I want to address in this talk is, how do you want to be known? How do I want to be known? How do we all want to be known? I think we don't think about this question enough. So, in order to know ourselves, we really have to think through a lot of hard, difficult questions. These can be really challenging, and they can be really fraught with a lot of tension and difficulty. Sometimes you might know yourself by memories that you have through your life, but sometimes you have to just try experiences and try and see if things that you do make sense or resonate with you, right? Some of us might do this at Earlham by trying to take a bunch of different classes to test what types of topics we might want to major in. And this is the same for knowing your gender as well. You just have to try a bunch of different things and see what sticks. So for me, this journey has been really interesting and sometimes really hard and fraught with troubles and frustrations. But overall, it's been a really good learning experience. And so I'd like to share some of that experience with you today. I think that when we think about this question, knowing thyself, sometimes we ask the wrong kinds of questions. So we might ask, like, where do you want to be in 5 years? What do you want to be when you grow up? What's your New Year's resolution? The answers to those questions are usually about a vocation or a habit or maybe a physical health type of response. So, New Year's resolutions are often about eating better or working out. Where you want to be in 5 years, often about your career, what kind of job you want to have. And the same is with the answer to what do you want to be when you grow up. I answered that question when I was little with the response that I wanted to be a scientist. I thought that was a pretty good answer. But we too often skip the harder questions of of deeper reflection, such as, who are you, and how do you want to be known? Here at Earlham College, we might think that this is a really good time to ask some of these questions, and it is. Earlham is a place that pushes you to think in ways that you haven't thought before, to think critically about ways that your life might be, to challenge you to expand your boundaries, to reach out to people around you who are different from you and learn from them, and then to change your views on what you thought was correct. The 5 years that I've been at Earlham have been really an interesting time, full of doubt and uncertainty. But one thing that I think is really amazing about Earlham College is the community. The community here at Earlham is like nowhere else that I've ever been, and I doubt that I'll ever be able to find a community like it no matter where I go next, if I go anywhere next. The faculty here, the community that I've come to encounter at Earlham, hopefully all of you as well, my colleagues and friends have really allowed this type of introspective questioning to occur in my life. Without that community, I really don't think that I would have been able to ask myself these questions and be honest with myself about the answers that I was getting. Another reason that I think I was able to ask myself these questions more recently is because I've kind of taken care of the what questions in my life. So I had answered the what do you want to be when you grow up? I'd become a scientist. And remember that little child drawing all the horse doodles in their notebook? Well, I'm also the proud owner of Maker Sweet Dreams, or otherwise known as Sista, my horse. So I kind of had these childhood dreams fulfilled and was thinking about deeper and bigger questions. So, how do I want to be known? I want you to know me as Emmett Smith, a transmasculine, genderqueer individual. You can use he, him pronouns when you talk about me. I came out about 11 months ago when I was 34. It's a pretty strange time to be coming out, though there's never a perfect time. But being middle-aged and letting the world know that you're updating your name, your gender, and your pronouns is a very disruptive thing. It was really hard to talk about with my spouse of 13 years, who met and married me when I was young, blonde, and feminine. I felt like I had lied, presented a false sense of myself to the world. And through all that, I had to remind myself that when I was 22, I didn't know about the BTQIA part of the rainbow. I had never been exposed to the beautiful diversity of gender and sexualities that I now know exist. So how could I choose if I didn't even know that I had a choice? So I'd like to read this quote from Alexander Leon. Queer people don't grow up as ourselves. We grow up playing a version of ourselves that sacrifices authenticity to minimize humiliation and prejudice. The massive task of our adult lives is to unpick which parts of ourselves are truly us and which parts we've created to protect us. So this idea of authenticity and being authentic is really important. But I want to point out that queer people are not the only folks who ask these kind of questions, right? Humans have been asking themselves these kind of questions since the dawn of history. For example, in recent memory in the United States, women asked what it would look like if they voted instead of staying silent, if they wore pants instead of skirts, and if they pursued careers outside of the home. African Americans asked what it would look like if they were treated equally to people with lighter colored skin. And Indigenous Americans asked what it would look like if they were able to reclaim their culture and practice their traditions and beliefs. So this idea, this desire to be seen for the authentic version of who you are really spans time and space. The challenge for a lot of queer folks is finding that true spark of authenticity and unpacking it from everything else that society puts on us from a very, very young age. Some trans people are adamant at a young age to be seen and identified as their appropriate gender, but there are many people that come out in their 20s, 30s, even in their 50s and 60s. And so this process is fraught with questions and doubts and uncertainties, and when you go through it, you end up just like agonizing over everything. Every single thought that enters your head is like scrutinized from 8 different angles, and frankly, it's exhausting. So I'd like to share some of that process with you today, some of my own personal doubts as I've gone through this gender journey. I don't hate my body. Am I really trans? Am I betraying womanhood by desiring to be masculine? Is this a midlife crisis? Did I invent this out of nowhere? How far am I willing to go? How many relationships will I strain or even break with people who won't or can't understand? How can I be so selfish, spending all this mental time and energy on myself? How do I define myself? What is gender anyway? Didn't humanity make it up in the first place? And the biggest question, the overarching question is, why can't I just know? Why do I have to go through all of this crap? It's so annoying. Why can't I just know? And there's no checklist for the TQ part of the rainbow. There's no one correct way to be trans. So there is no certainty of knowing. But that's part of the beauty of the rainbow, right? All the diverse people in it, we need that diversity. So there's no right way to do this. So you can't just know. Sorry to tell you, people out there who might be questioning along with me. You have to just experience it. And so there's 2 terms in the queer community that you may or may not be aware of. One of them is gender dysphoria. This is the distress a person feels due to a mismatch between their gender identity and their sex assigned at birth. But there's also another term out there, gender euphoria, which consists of comfort or joy when thinking about one's true gender identity, being correctly gendered, and participating in activities typically associated with one's identified gender. And I think that as much import as we tend to give gender dysphoria and use that as a definition for being trans a lot of the time, we also really need to consider gender euphoria as a critical component. I was reading a subreddit the other day, and they were saying that gender euphoria ought to actually be just as important, or maybe even more important of a defining factor than gender dysphoria. And I really like that because I like positive things, and gender euphoria is definitely the more positive of these 2. So let me tell you, since I've shared some doubts, of some of my own gender euphoric moments. So when I look down and see a flat chest, I am content. When I get called sir or gentleman, that makes me happy. When I cut my hair, I couldn't stop grinning at the reflection in the mirror for days. This whole process has really strengthened me as a person. It's made me better able to speak up for myself and advocate for myself and for others as well. And so though it's been a really tough struggle and a hard journey, I couldn't have done it without the Earlham community, but I also am happy that I had to go through it, even though it sucked, because I've come out stronger on the other side. So if you're out there questioning your own gender identity, really, you're gonna have to go through these doubts, you're gonna have to go through these tough questions and really looking at yourself, investigating who you are. But don't forget that you have to try stuff too. So go out and put on some makeup. Spray on some cologne before that party. Go to the opposite side of the store you usually shop on and buy some clothes or get some clothes from a friend and try them on. You will find that men's pants have incredibly functional pockets, and you'll never go back. And you might enjoy putting on a dress and twirling around, right? Wobble around in some high heels, put on a wig, cut your hair, it's gonna grow back. You just have to try stuff, and then don't be afraid of those euphoric moments. The euphoria that you feel is real, and that's true, and you gotta pay attention to it. So addressing those kind of questions and going through those kind of activities can really help you on your gender journey. So before I end, I just wanna mention that earlier I talked about how women were able to conquer pants when normally they were confined to wearing skirts. And I think it's time for gentlemen to do the opposite. Gentlemen, you've been wearing pants for far too long. I want to see some skirts out there. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.